Oh, my name is Bradley Garrett. I'm a social geographer at the University of Southampton, and I'm also a columnist for Guardian Cities. So those two hats that I wear are the two hats that I'm wearing at the festival today. In one session, I'll be talking about place hacking your city, thinking about how we access off-limit spaces in cities, and how trespass can be used as a sort of political act to reimagine cities on our own terms. And then in another session, I'm going to be thinking about public and private space, which is obviously a related issue. So thinking about the ways in which private entities are sort of gobbling up urban space, and what we can do as journalists and academics to raise awareness on these things, but also what we can do as citizens to try and reclaim some of those spaces back from those forces. I think that the politics of how space is managed is crucial to this day and age, because increasingly cities are being built as spaces that are spaces of spectatorship. Right? Cities are built to be bought into temporarily, but we don't have a vested stake in them in the way that we used to. And so I see trespass as a way of speaking back to those forces. Trespass as a way of sort of reclaiming some of our participatory rights to the city. I'm originally from Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is famously a city without culture, so people like to pitch it. If we think about what the problem is with Los Angeles, there are a number, but the city doesn't have a central core. There's a lot of sprawl. It was built for cars, but fundamentally, the problem with Los Angeles is that it doesn't respect its own history in a way. So the city is sort of knocked down and reformed every 10 years, and there's the sense that it's always on the cusp of the new. And I've now been living in the UK for 7 years. And it seems to me that sort of mallification or Disneyfication of cities is now happening in British cities, right? It's all starting to look, every city centre starts to feel the same. It's got its nod to art with the sort of public sculpture that no one can interact with. It's got the open air private space, privately owned public space that is surrounded by all of the expected chain stores. These cities are not, I think, conducive to a notion of participation. And so I'm trying to sort of call that out on the one hand, but also take action, right? Because as researchers and journalists and people thinking about cities, it's one thing to talk about a problem and it's another thing to propose a solution, right? So I think that the activist part of my role in what I do is actually more important than what I do as a public speaker or a writer. I spend a lot of time walking around cities, talking to people, investigating infrastructures. Sometimes this is quite literal. I will hop over fences, I will climb into tunnels that are being excavated, and I'll have a look for myself at what's going on there. I'll have a look at how our public money is being invested. But equally, I like to go into the kind of marginal places in the city, the edge lands, the liminal zones, the spaces that are kind of forgotten and left behind, brownfield sites. I love going over the fence into these sites and doing something with them, throwing a party, building a little apartment in there that can be used, a little urban bothy for people who, when they're passing through, they can find a key and open up that space and use it. So these sorts of actions, I think, for me, none of these things are going to change what's happening around us, right? But what they can do is they can start a conversation, and hopefully, more than that, they can incite someone else to action in whatever small ways people want to participate in the city. Not everyone wants to climb a skyscraper. I understand that. Not everyone wants to sneak into a construction site. Not everyone wants to climb through tunnels and go into sewers and see abandoned buildings. But what everyone can do is to start paying attention to how the city is being constructed around us and how the city's changing, and paying attention in particular to the interstices, the little zones in between these projects where we can reclaim small pieces of rights to the city, right? It's like the gaps in the pavement where you get little shoots of grass coming through, right? after a while, if you let that continue, it will split the pavement, it will open the whole thing up, right? That's precisely what I'm trying to encourage through my urban activism. I've spent time exploring and trespassing in other cities and other parts of the world, including Phnom Penh in Cambodia. I've spent some time in Australia, sometimes in Central America, in Mexico. And there's a balance to be struck, right? In Phnom Penh, I found people occupying derelict space, and clearly no one was asking for any permission. You know, there's a derelict skyscraper, there's a community that surrounds it. Well, people will use it. They'll hang their laundry up in there. They'll set up small carts where they're selling food. And I think there's something to be learned from that. Obviously, we don't want to go completely to the other end of the scale where we've got complete anarchy, right? And everyone's colonizing everything. But it seems to me that the sort of post-Thatcherite neoliberal ideologies that are guiding the construction of our cities now to look to be more of a spectacle than a participatory space, they've gone too far the other way. So it's somewhere in that tension in between that we can find the kind of city that we're looking for, and that's what I'm trying to inspire.